Great to have you over the final panel of the day, and we had a whole lot of discussions, and we had a panel on the government, have they failed to do something for the event sector, and suddenly I got a news sometime back that there's a big announcement coming. Great on that day when we are hosting this. So quickly, I want to start with you, Mr. Pawar. We know what the situation has been for the experiential agencies and even the companies. How have you pivoted to stay relevant?
Thank you, Rohel, for having me here, and thank you, Nama, for all the work that you do keep doing behind the scene always, and all the panelist friends. I think we have been together earlier also in a similar environment. I think 6 months back, sometimes, yes. So and similar and same discussions that had happened during that time. So Royal, things have again come back to the lockdown situation here in Maharashtra now. And what is the only difference that I see now is I think we are ready for it. Sorts, I don't know what, but that fear is kind of gone, and we are fighting it. We know what we have to do. We have a plan in place, and maybe most of the time, like Sanjoy just sometimes back said, I think we are nowhere. We don't even know where we are heading towards and how governments are responding and what's happening now. But I think on all those fronts, if you look at it, IEEMA collectively today is wanting to fight this war, take it head on, because we are not realizing the amount of ancillary segments that are surviving. In fact, look at our employees too, down the line, these trends and all the industries that are working towards having this thing together, and we are the most affected industry. Others are all, I think, somewhere or the other coping up, but then I think we and our industry is below the line. Like morning, I saw one video which went viral of a magician opening a vada pav stall, and he actually saying strongly that now I need to commit suicide. He's saying, I'm going to do this, and this is my staff behind. I have nowhere to go. You just close down my vada pav. You say Amazons and all these guys work, only Zomatos and Swiggies can sell, and who's going to buy my vada pav on a Zomato or a Swiggy? So there is a lot of issues which local outlets are facing, and I think that's there to face now. But I think what we have pivoted towards, and that's what your question was, is I think technology is what we have all embraced, and companies have to do that. The technology, as I think most of the panelists out here are going to be talking about, our platforms and what we did during the lockdown. I think, Rohel, you and all of us got together, if you remember, and IEEMA, we started doing these virtual events. I think from the day one, March 21st last year, was our first large virtual event that we did, because all artists were sitting Vela, and we got everybody to do that Thali Baji along with us that time, and all musicians came. And from then on, IEEMA did 150 plus live virtual events. During that period itself is what we realized that corporates are going to be doing this. There is no other way out. And now how that's going to be turning into, and how virtual world is going to be, I think there are better people out here who are going to be speaking more about it. So I'll leave it to them.
Ms. Syed, coming to you, how we know the story, but how did you adjust? Take us a little through that journey, while the thick of the lockdown and then emerging out of it and getting your clients back. What was it like for you?
To be honest, I think we got screwed big time. Okay, so how it went to trickling down to employees, we all said we will pay full salaries. It didn't happen. So, just went into June, July, and we realized that our losses were increasing to a huge extent. So we had to cut down on all places. What we did is we tried then retaining the tech people, and we realized that the corporates had started already till then. We were on virtual events. So we quickly, I found a friend, and collaboration was the key word that time. Sachin Talwar was from Wow Events, who's there. And, so me and him, we got together and formed a company called Streamy. And Streamy today, now that we have platforms, and we just started getting loaded with events from our own fraternity, because they had nowhere to go. And it was a very simple process to bring things together and putting in our heads together and bring in the right technology in place and the right vendors, right partners, the studios, the shoots, the works, whatever. And today, it all has been a pilot for us. Each of those events were pilots, which now, if you look at it, have become into a case study for ourselves. And
Right.
I think if the virtual world, which we are saying is going to stay for good, maybe hybrid and a mix of that. But I think that's what we have suddenly found. And I think we are doing very, very good in that area.
Right, right. Syed, coming to you, Mr. Rashid Syed, tell us your story, your journey of the last 1 year, getting the clients back, convincing them, and now facing another situation.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rohil, and thanks to the entire BW team. And thank you for good to have to be part of such an elite panel. Like Deepak also mentioned, the journey has been quite similar to most of the other experiential agencies that have gone through the process. What we did in Josh P. Johnson maybe a little differently is that in 2008, when the financial meltdown happened globally, our US offices got hit quite badly. At that time, India was not hit that badly. And at that time, we put a plan in place along with our global offices to say that we should not let something like this affect us badly. A crisis like this, just took the sails out, wind out of our sails. So we put a plan in place which we called Building the Agency of the Future. Mm-hmm. And we said that we should not be a one-trick pony anymore, not just focus on events, but have all the supplementary services that come with events and experiential, whether it is bringing film and video internally, or whether it's creative and digital internally, bringing audience marketing and audience acquisition, strategy and planning. So what we did is we started bringing all these other ancillary services that we used to outsource, and or the clients would go to other agencies to do. We started bringing them in-house. And come 2020, and when the first quarter of last year COVID hit us, what we started seeing is that while physical events were off the table, we were able to sell all the other services that we had built over the years to our clients to do various non-event related work. So we got into communication, we got into pure digital work, we were making film and videos for them. Of course, then the virtual events kicked in. All of us learned along the way, and there was a lot of takers for virtual events because clients found that was a only replacement for physical events as a medium of communication to their core audiences. And we, of course, we didn't have an in-house platform then. Now we have launched globally a platform called Osprey. But at that point in time, we used a lot of other platforms like Hubilo as well. Mm-hmm. And I think last year we had a fairly decent year. We executed about 150 to 160 virtual events, both for our current clients as well as clients we thought we would never work with ever. So I remember going to Z-Melt event, in Mumbai, or going to Design Yatra in Goa every year, and thinking that, wow, this is such a beautiful event. I wish I would execute this event. And of course, never spoke to Rajesh from Curious about it because I thought that, he's set with the agency that is there. And, luck would have it, differently. And then Rajesh actually reached out to me through Anand, his editor, and said, hey, listen, our current agency is not able to execute our virtual event. We want to turn Z-Melt and Design Yatra into virtual. Can you guys help us? And then we supported them with Z-Melt as well as Design Yatra. Both were paid events. The other example was India Mobile Congress. We used to go every year to India Mobile Congress with Red Hat, IBM, Ericsson, and Vodafone, these kind of clients, but never managed it end to end. But India Mobile Congress, last year we handled end to end the virtual part of it. So, where some opportunities went off the table, other new opportunities came our way. And that's how COVID has been, I think, for a lot of, people, organizations, agencies, that's been the journey for them last year. So I think, of course, the physical events is something that we miss because of, the profitability and the margin that is much, much better over there. But we are sustaining quite a bit with virtual events now and learning new things. New technology is being brought to the table. Clients are lapping it up. But maybe this question will probably come up during the course of the panel discussion, Rohit,
Right.
but I'll just kind of socialize it now, which is now clients are saying virtual events are fine. People are coming on, registering and logging in, but we are not finding the kind of engagement that was there in physical events. What can you guys do for us? So this year, 2021, the challenge is now going to become, looks like we have to stay with virtual event this year, but how are you going to make it more engaging for us? So I leave it over there.
Yes, Mr. Joshi, I will come to you on that. Yes, yeah. Before that, I want to go to Mr. Chawla and understand the ThinkXQ story over the last 1 year. How did you come to terms with this?
Thanks, Royal. Thanks for inviting us. Thanks to BW. Good evening, all the panelists, in fact. Our story was no different. If I start talking about our story, it will be similar to what Rashid said or what Deepak was talking about. And I'm sure that all others would have a similar story. Right? This was not something which had a formula that any would put into and come out of it. Everyone was trying something new or different and was trying to sustain themselves.
Tell me, your teams, for example, that's relevant. Your teams also, how did you keep your teams together during this tough time? No experiential spend, and brands have just withholding their budgets. Give me a sense of that.
So, one good thing that we did was we ensured that we did not lay off anyone. Right. Having said that, this does not mean that we were giving out 100% salaries. There was a salary cut. We got certain people to go on sabbatical, ensuring that as soon as business starts picking up, or they would have clients who they can reach out to and get business, they can start earning salaries from that. So there was no layoff as such. Rather, we created opportunities for them to kind of look out for options for themselves. Secondly, when you talk about what differently we did in this time, the initial 3 months of lockdown, when we were there, we understood that business is not going to start easy. Right. So what we started doing is, first thing that we started was we started a program called Train the Experts. So we started getting in touch with our clients and in fact certain partners of ours, and we started doing training programs with them for our employees. Now this was across the industry, across the the portfolio that we worked on, and we also pushed our clients to our employees to go and learn new techniques, new softwares, take certain courses. So we started pushing them and helping them into take those added knowledge that they could have. So the first 3 months we invested into our own teams, right? Whether it was knowledge gain, whether it was experience gain, all of that came together. And that's when after 3 months we started putting efforts into getting clients on board for virtual events. One good part with us was the other company that we have is Uncomplicated Studio, which creates AVs and films. That became very handy because at this time most of the communication was happening via the audiovisual medium. So most of our clients, we were doing, in fact, initial bit we started doing certain audiovisuals for all our clients. We were bringing awareness with the COVID sanitation, all the things that we were doing. The clients started reaching out to us to help them with all the kind of internal and external communication that we're doing. That helped us, in fact. That was a big support which we got in virtual events also, as well as individual business that we started doing on a digital front. Also, I think where we found an edge over the other partners, if I may say, most of the, in fact, this I don't know if it's positive or negative, with so many layoffs happening and certain companies closing as well, there were too many good talent which was available in the market, which started reaching out to clients directly. Now, obviously, a single man army who had contacts with persons, with the vendors also, they were ready to work on very less margins, right? So when, you are sustaining a team of good 15, 20 people, and, at the same time, you are now standing against a person who's ready to work on a very thin margin. You were, I don't know, it was just a chance that either the clients go with them because of cost being an advantage, or they would look at you if you are able to bring some value in terms of content, concept. That's what people are looking at. So we were losing out on business where it was only a cost model, right? If it was a normal webinar, we were losing out. But there were clients who reached out to us and they wanted concept-based, content-based stuff where we were winning pitches. That's where, we had an edge over these partners. Last year, one of the reason of, the clients also did not know about what virtual events are, what webinars are. People were selling webinars and terming it as virtual events, and selling it half the price or maybe even lesser. So it took time for us to educate the clients also. When some clients worked with us, we created some customized platform for them, customized solutions for them, and that's when they could differentiate between what a webinar is and what a virtual event is. So yes, it was tough. I'm sure everyone has a similar story, but like I said, we were sustaining with the mindset that 1 year at max, and then things will open up. We in fact just came back from Goa. We did a big exhibition, Couture India show in Goa, and we were very hopeful that after that, now things will open up. And as soon as we were back, we heard the story that Mumbai is under lockdown, Delhi is again under night curfew. This is putting another pressure on us, because where we were thinking of now going back to normal, we would be back at the same place where we were last year at the same time. So another year of similar story, or and like Rashid rightly said, the clients are now willing to create an experience for their employees and not just communicating to them from a one-way to two-way, creating better experiences and engagements. So I think the challenge will be bigger, but I guess all of us are ready to take those challenges, create new things, and going back to our clients with new solutions.
Ms. Joshi, thanks for being so patient. You have been, you have provided technological solutions, and some of them have been really, kind of taken on a large scale. Tell me, from the tech side, the event tech side, how mature has our technology become in the last 1 year in its offerings? Because it sounded like a physical event has been replicated online, but how mature have we become on that front now?
Okay, thank you, Rohel. Hello, everyone in the panel. I think what has happened is we have become more sensitive. The clients have become more sensitive. They understand the word streaming. They understand bandwidth. They understand what a full HD quality would be. So all these technical nitty-gritties, once your client understands, he's able to get better out of you and better out of people who are underperforming. There are so many people in our industry now who are offering virtual events, and half of them, really, like Akshay was mentioning, half of them don't understand the difference between just doing a very simple streaming and what a virtual event can do. Also is a lot of theoretical knowledge that have been built looking at analytics. So our clients are able to understand what has happened with their events over a period of time, what features. It's just like A/B testing, which is a very famous thing in any kind of computer aided research, but they are able to do this A/B testing in the real world across their several events, and now they have a very clear understanding of what features work and what features don't work. Just like Rashid said, what is next for virtual? I think more personalization, customized interfaces. So I and Rashid could have a completely different taste, and there could be things that can get customized for him and me. And then going into more experiential stuff, which could be introducing more of WebGL, which is 3D on the web, empowering you with augmented reality. So you can use your phone to augment some kind of launch event, which is happening live, and several other aspects like interesting features from an example would be Clubhouse, where you move around the group. So their discussions are happening in a virtual event. You can actually move around the groups and you can listen to what groups are doing. So adding more and more human features to a virtual event is the next step for industry, and clients are very well placed because they understand what works, what doesn't work.
Mr. Pawar, there's also a conversation that what Mr. Syed referred to as, clients are now, they want engagement, and there's a certain, when we have reached a point where we need a little bit of break from frequent, so many events happening virtually. What are you hearing from the client side about the virtual events?
So I think the clients very strongly are using a word called digital fatigue. And that's the next that the tech platforms or people who are behind these tech platforms need to understand. User journeys need to be understood properly. See, we don't have much time. Look at here Elon Musk, here or here all these guys, 5 years. And what actually we are doing right now, as all of us as platform builders or Huzo is working towards, is basically getting in the information behind which AI in future is going to gather and work it out for you. So honestly, it's 4 or 5 years down the line, and AI would take over. If you look at worldwide, events are said to be now, can the mobile and can the laptop screens be removed out from our fronts, you know? And can there be anything else? Why can't that be? So there can be a zone where you're getting into an event. That zone is being created by your Oculus goggles and stuff like that. So things are still in a very nascent stage in India. In fact, we're still roaming around on our pilots, but other parts of the world have already started accepting, yes, virtual is there to stay around now. How, I think in the one panel before, the gentleman was talking about the kind of an experiences that are created and the crores of rupees that have been spent earlier on those mega events, and now in a crore, how he is able to do a mega. Because see, we are creating a television product. Geography is become history. People are hiring people from across the world. So we are right now sitting in a position where there is no reason or a need for just to do those 200-300 engagements which are there. So people have understood, businesses have, models have changed. Virtual is there to stay. Now, how engaging do we make virtual? How does a person feel that 1.5? It's like a movie we are watching or a television show we are watching. What is it that 1.5 hour that you're going to give? I would say, look at strongly the artists. Look at strongly the engaging partners who are there. Look at these people who are going to build your event or build that story, and how you put that story out to people. Also, I think the other parts like Nikhil, very high on tech, can think of what kind of one-on-one engagements that are possible today, you know, wherein we still take us from Zoom right now, and we are broadcasting with the 18 seconds delay out onto a panel where people are watching after some time, and there's no way we are engaging with them but a chat. Why can't this be in real time? Why can't there be responses in real time? So all those things need to be still worked out. I think that digital fatigue will go out someday if the engagement is better, and if the story that we are talking about or that is being unveiling at any time for anyone is very experiential. So that experiences need to be bettered right now, and I think technology needs to help us do that properly. I'll give you one example here. Sorry, Rohil. Sure. And I think Nikhil should talk about it more, because in future, 5 years down the line, when I was talking about what AI is going to be, look at what Unreal Engine is doing. There is no more rendering. You know, on our virtual events, now we can create stages in real time using real environments, placing you in real out there in a studio. That's a studio we have created in Lokhandwala right now. Okay, it's a large studio. It's an Unreal based technology. So you can just be coming in and the cameras move and pan the scenes behind you. Now these movies, the large movies, the multi-billion-dollar movies have been created in one room now. So if that's the possibility, so your post-production is coming down completely, and everything is happening in that one studio, and you're going to do things faster. You're still creating content, but how you're creating the content, how you're creating the virtual content, how faster are you creating that? That's the technology. So meta-humans, which are the upcoming future of faces and people. Like I can create a digital you, and then how that digital you is going to be interacting left out in the virtual world. And that is going to be the future. So in next 4 years, 5 years down the line, you're going to see that. Nobody's going to stop that. Everybody has to bring it in.
Like I just want to add, like what it's already happening, volumetric shooting using cameras. So I can have Deepak, and then I can have a completely real-time 3D space built in Unreal, and I can move around them. So every participant of the virtual event can choose his own perspective, because there's nothing 2D about it. It's not like a two-dimensional movie that we should. It's already happening. You have Microsoft volumetric capture studios that you can hire, and there's at several places internationally. They're not in India right now, but it's just about time. Maybe I would give it only 2 years. I think the need right now is there. India as an economy has a lot of people who would want to invest in something like that. Those studios and those technologies, as soon as they are available in Mumbai, in metropolitan cities, we would be able to build real-time 3D studios which are stored in our computers. We never have to actually go out, and people can be there will be cameras that will shoot you volumetrically, so I can augment you, I can see you inside a VR glass, in a hologram, and just move around you, shake hand, just I could be standing behind you in a virtual event and you can just look back at me. All things that are natural to humans would come to life as soon as we are able to achieve these things, and they are already there. They are in their first leg of getting developed in a lot of parts in Europe and US. But I think in just couple of years we will be there. Some huge international client would start it in India when they have to invest a huge amount to start off with.
Right.
But yes.
Sounds very fascinating. On that note, Mr. Syed, tell me, what do you think of experiential spend coming back? Before the second wave that we're talking about, what were brands thinking, and are they going to withhold those budgets again? What is your understanding in your conversations with brands?
So we have a term in Josh P. Johnson that we are called roaring 20s. So what we were hearing from our clients is that they are just, fed up of the whole digital fatigue, like Deepak also mentioned, both our customers as well as our clients. And they're just looking forward to events coming back. In fact, my CEO, who was based in San Francisco, he visited Vegas recently for a meeting, and he got a feedback from the properties that he visited saying that the bookings for 2022 are on the same level as 2019. So
Right.
Clients are just absolutely looking forward to coming back to physical events because that's what was giving them the ROI, giving them the engagement, deepening relationships, having better conversations about the products and services. And we human beings are social animals, right? There's only so much that we can stay online, no matter how much engagement, how much experiences, how many new event formats you do, how many ever technology aspects and innovations you bring into the scene. We need to go out there and meet each other and shake hands and have conversations, whether personal or business. So I was hearing from clients that physical events something they want to come back very, very strongly to. Just one other thing I wanted to add, Ruhail, is that we all are really excited about what virtual events can offer, both in terms of geography as well as the number of people that we can reach. But I read an article, an interview actually by the Salesforce global CMO about when we were getting into lockdown last year and virtual events were happening. She said that any virtual event that has more than 12 people is a waste of time and waste of money. She says that you cannot create engagement for more than 12 people in the room in a virtual scenario. There's thousands of people that we get. Of course, if you're doing an entertaining show or you're doing some concert and things like that where people are engaging, Billie Eilish and Justin Bieber and all these guys did global shows virtually, and people were paying 2,500 rupees ticket in India and attending those shows. That's fine. That people are attending, listening, engagement is happening virtually. But if you're in a B2B context, anything more than 12 people, of course, you have to take that with a sack of salt because, you can't really, how many people can you really touch if you do 12 people at a time virtual event? And right. Salesforce did a Dreamforce event with us 2019, which had 172,000 people attending from all over the world. A B2B event with 172,000 people. And she's talking about, having 12 people in an event in a virtual scenario. So scaling that is obviously a challenge, but I think the point that is being made is that engagement, if you have to do, it can't be done at scale. It has to be done, one to few rather than one to many.
Right. Mr. Chawla, while Mr. Syed said that clients are waiting for physical events to resume, we have heard a lot about phygital. I think now on physical events will have a tech component as an essential part. What is your reading? Is it the case? Is it going to be so now?
Definitely. I think, if you look at phygital, that's going to be the future. Like Mr. Syed said, people and companies, the corporates are willing and waiting to come back to the physical scenario Like I said, we just did a hybrid event. It was a hybrid launch for a client of ours. We went for an exhibition in Goa. We had networking dinners there. There were a lot of queries which were lined up for physical events as such. But whenever the briefs were coming, it was lined up with virtual streaming along with it. So virtual will not fade out. It's not just limited to 2020. Virtual would be a part of it. I think it will be more of a combination that we will have to now offer to our clients. There will be physical events with reaching out to more number of masses through the virtual scenario being kind of added to it. And that's where I think the future lies.
Right. I'm so sorry. I am short on time today, and we have the award function virtually, which we are doing. And despite what the state of the industry is, we received close to 200 nominations, and we're glad for everyone who supported us. Thank you once again for joining us. We'll have another conversation another day very soon. Thanks once again.